Okay, so let's go over our practice problems 4, 5, and 6. So number 4 says negative 14 equals 2/3 x. And so obviously, just like we did in our example problem, example number 2, we're going to be working with reciprocals because right now this is obviously multiplication 2/3 times x. And so to undo that operation, we're going to have to divide by 2/3 on each side. And so that ends up being a reciprocal because just like in example 2 when we were doing, if we write this out, we have negative 14 as a fraction, be negative 14 over 1 divided by 2/3. And when we divide, we have to multiply by the reciprocal. So we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of 2/3, which would be 3/2 or 3 over 2. And this all equals x. So again, if you prefer to multiply straight across first and then simplify, you're more than welcome to do that. I prefer to simplify first because you have smaller numbers. So just looking diagonally, 1 and 3, nothing else is going to be able to factor into 1 and 3. We're not going to be able to divide those and to make them any smaller or simplify them. But 2 and 14 are both divisible by 2. So I'm going to cross cancel. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and negative 14 divided by 2 is going to be negative 7. So I'm left with negative 7 over 1 times 3 over 1. And so now we can just multiply straight across. So negative 7 times 3 is negative 21, and 1 times 1 is 1. So negative 21 over 1, which we all know by now, or we should know by now, is just 21, or I'm sorry, negative 21. And that is what our x equals. Negative 21, that is our x. So hopefully you guys got that one when you're trying that on your own. So 5, negative 8/5, or negative 8 over 5b equals 5. So again, we're going to divide out the fraction. So divide 8/5 on both sides so that we can undo that multiplication. So here we are left with b equals 5 over 1 times negative 5 over 8. And here there is nothing to cross cancel. 5 and 8, there's no factor. And 1 and 5, again, there's nothing that we can simplify. So I'm just going to go ahead and multiply straight across. So we can say b equals negative 25. 5 times negative 5 is negative 25. And then 8 times 1 is 8. And now we could divide this out if we wanted to. If you want to turn this into a decimal, you can. I'm going to turn it into a mixed number. So remember, mixed number, how many times does our denominator, 8, go into our numerator of 25? And so I kind of gave it away there. 8 goes into 25 3 times because 8 times 3 is 24. And this is still negative, so it's going to be negative 3. My denominator stays the same. It's still that 8. And then what's left over? So 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. And there's 1 left over to get to 25. So our final answer would be b equals negative 3 and 1/8. Negative 3 and 1/8. So again, if you wanted to do that in decimal form, you could have done that as well. But I just thought it would be a little faster to do mixed number. So last but not least, number 6, negative 3/8 times h equals negative 9. So again, dividing out the fraction because we have to undo that operation of multiplication. And this fraction is negative. Please don't forget about the negative signs, you guys. You know, that's never, I know I kind of drilled that into you at the beginning of this unit, and I'm going to keep doing it because we can't forget about those negatives. It makes the problem completely different. So the 3/8 obviously cancel out over here, so we're left with h equals negative 9 over 1 times the reciprocal, negative 8 over 3. And looking at the diagonals here, we can tell 9 and 3 are both divisible by 3, so I'm going to go ahead and cross cancel. So 3 divided by 3 is 1, and negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. So now I can go ahead, now that those numbers are a little smaller, a little bit simpler, I can go ahead and multiply across. So here, negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 8 is positive 24. And that's going to be over 1 because 1 times 1 is 1. So I'm just going to leave it as 24. So H equals 24. So hopefully you guys got those right, or you got the majority of them right. If you're still confused by one or more, please come see me and ask me so I can clarify for you guys. But hopefully you're feeling pretty confident with solving equations with multiplication and division now. So the one last thing that I wanted to cover before we move on, before you guys can start practicing this more, would be how to write equations out when we're talking about multiplication and division. So here we just have some phrases, and we want to be able to turn these phrases into expressions. And so, for example, in example 3, the first one, A, says, a number divided by 9 is negative 16. And so the first thing that I want you guys to be able to identify when you're looking at or reading phrases is whenever it says a number, that means it could be any number out there. So this is where we need to put in a variable. So whenever you see a number, you need to put in a variable. And sometimes it will give you the variable. Sometimes this could have read a number W divided by negative 9 is negative 16. And so sometimes it will give you that variable. But in this case, it didn't. So we're just going to create our own. So that's whenever you see a number and it's not listed, it just says it just could be any possible number. That's when we know that we have to put in a placeholder or our variable. So this is saying a number divided by negative 9 is negative 16. So first, I'm just going to do the easy part, put our equal sign and negative 16, because we know that that is what our answer has to be. The other key term that we need to remember is divided by. Divided by. That by is really important. So divided by tells you that the next number is going to be the denominator, because that you're dividing the numerator by the denominator. So that means that negative 9 is going to be our numerator. And then we can put our variables, let's say W, as our numerator. So W divided by 9 equals negative 19. Now, if you did it the other way, and I just want to put this to show you guys, if you were to have flipped it and done negative 9 as a numerator, this would read negative 9 divided by W. Okay, so I just kind of want to show you guys that so you can get a little bit of an example. Now, the other way that you can write this, I just wrote it as a fraction. If you want to write the division symbol, you can. You could also write this as W divided by negative 9 equals negative 16. These are both right. It's both saying the same exact thing. So you could write either or. All right, so next one, B. The product of 15 and a number, so again, and a number, that's our variable, is negative 75. So hopefully you guys can kind of remember from last year as well, whenever you see this term product, that automatically means multiplication, or to multiply. So product is always at multiplication, and quotient, which you might see, and then you're actually going to see it number 7, quotient is division. So these would be two key terms if you want to write these out in your notes. If you don't already know them, maybe write them out so that you can know quotient is division, or means to divide, and product is multiplication. So B says the product of 15 and a number is negative 75. And so that is right there again, is telling us, is the easy part. That's our answer. So I'm going to put that equal sign for is, negative 75. And then the product, the multiplication of 15 and a number, any number. So I'm going to put, I can just put M for our variable. So 15M. So remember, guys, and this is something that I really want to click in now more than ever is whenever a number is right next to a variable, that means to multiply. And that's something that I'm currently drilling into my 6th graders right now so that they can, get it in now and remember it when they're in 7th grade next year. But we really got to remember whenever a number is right next to a variable, or if a number is right next to a parentheses, it means to multiply. And hopefully I've kind of drilled that into you guys enough this semester that immediately when you see that, you know that that means multiplication. But again, this could also be written as 15 with that little dot times m equals negative 75. You will not see me use the x as a multiplication sign anymore, just because now that we're working with variables, it is going to be confusing to have the x as a time symbol when we could also be using x as a variable. So I'm going to be using this dot, or just putting the number next to the variable like I did in this first example right here. So 15m equals negative 75. So that would be the product of 15 and a number. And again, on these two, you guys could have picked any letter you wanted for your variable. It doesn't have to be W or M. Any variable would be correct if you were taking this as a quiz or a test. So I want you guys to try these two on your own, 7 and 8. So just like we did on the first two example problems, all you're doing is you're taking these two phrases and you're creating an expression to define them. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and have you guys try these. Remember, if you can't remember which operation quotient is, you can look up in your notes where you hopefully wrote it down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this. All right, so 7. The quotient of a number and negative 1.5 is 21. So for me, again, I always like to look at that is. That's always the equal sign, so I like to do that first. So is 21. And then quotient, remember that quotient is division. That is our key term for division, our key phrase. Whenever you see quotient, you know you're going to be dividing. So the quotient of a number and negative 1.5. Quotient of a number and negative 1.5. So hopefully you guys thought about this a little bit. So, sorry, I'm repeating myself a few times. So the quotient of a number, so you can pick any number, any letter you want. Not any number, any letter you want. So I'm just going to do x. The quotient of a number and negative 1.5. So x divided by negative 1.5 would equal 21. And if you wanted to pause the video here just for practice and undo the operation to figure out what x is, you're more than welcome to do that. Remember, if you're undoing division, you would multiply by both sides to figure out what x is. All right, so our last one, a number multiplied by positive 2/5 is 3/20. So again, I'm going to do that is first, 3/20. And then number, it already even tells us multiply. That was pretty easy, multiplication. So number, let's say p multiplied by 2/5. I'm going to put that little dot this time. Oops, I wrote 2/3. Multiplied by 2/5. Again, if you wanted to, you could have put 2/5 p equals 3/20. Either or will work. So hopefully you guys got those two right and you're feeling pretty confident with this lesson. Again, if something's not making sense, please come see me to get help, because I definitely don't want you guys to be confused or feel lost or not understanding something. So please come see me if you're not understanding anything, or watch part of this video again, or go over your notes if you think that you need to review part of it.